Imagine a dusty frontier cabin late at night. Inside, a single lantern casts uneasy shadows over a man lying on a bunk, blood soaking into rough blankets. The only sound is the rough breathing of the injured man and the muttered prayers of the people gathered around him. A so-called doctor leans over the sickbed. His hands are steady, but his face betrays tension. Outside, coyotes howl in the darkness. In Hollywood, a frontier doctor is often portrayed as a heroic figure. He calmly wipes the sweat from a cowboy's brow, administers a shot of whiskey, and saves a life with a steady knife and a clever trick. The image is of polished confidence, quiet competence, and ultimate success. It fits neatly into the myth of the Wild West as a place where even danger gives way to skilled bravery. But what if I told you that this image is almost entirely fictional? Today, we're going to reveal the truth about frontier medicine in the Wild West, a world far more desperate, primitive, and terrifying than the movies suggest. In the movies, frontier doctors have elegant offices and full surgical kits. In real life, their conditions were far more modest. In the earliest mining camps and railroad towns, a doctor might not even have an office at all. Often, the first doctor in a new settlement was just a man with a certificate who hung a sign out on a tree or a tent and advertised cures. Simple wooden shacks or converted saloon rooms served as surgery theaters. Medical supplies were whatever the doctor happened to have hauled with him. Maybe a few bottles of patent medicine, an old brass syringe, some bandages, and a rusty knife. Only in long-established towns would you find something closer to a proper clinic, but even then, it was far from modern. Imagine an oil lamp-lit room lined with workbenches instead of beds, floors of hard-packed dirt, and instruments laid out on a rough wooden table. That scene is more truthful than any Hollywood set. What truly defined frontier medicine was not cleanliness or comfort at all. It was smell and noise and desperation. Picture the sweet sour stink of herbs boiled over an open fire mixing with the coppery smell of blood. Every time a cabin door opened, dust and horse sweat from outside might drift in. Conversation between doctor and patient was often muffled by coughing from untreated pneumonia or tuberculosis in the room. The din of a restless patient's moans and the rattling of an old stove were more likely background than any practiced calm. Surgery was anything but safe. Gone were the quiet moans of patients under anesthetic from modern scenes. Many frontier patients had no anesthetic. If they were lucky, they might taste rum or whiskey at the beginning of a procedure. Or they might get a slug of laudanum and a firm leather strap to bite down on. Women who went into labor and had complications sometimes endured gut-wrenching pain as a doctor cut with a knife by lantern light. Forget a gunslinger as the biggest threat. On the frontier, the real enemy in that cabin was invisible: infection. If a doctor made a cut with a dirty scalpel or bandaged a wound with a soiled cloth, the patient faced fever and death in the following days. No chloroform, no sterilized gloves, just chance. Frontier settlements were built on distance. The closest help might be days away. If a miner was crushed by a rock or a ranch hand was gored by a bull, they couldn't be rushed to a modern hospital. They had to be cared for where they fell. Doctors had to travel by horse or carriage across rough terrain. A chronic shortage of qualified physicians meant many towns had none at all. Without infrastructure, medical care turned into a kind of logistical nightmare. Towns on distant frontiers often had no pharmacy to speak of, and medicines were rare. Doctors improvised. They made poultices from local herbs, boiled water for simple cleans, and used whatever ointments they carried. Popular patent medicines, the ones hawked at fairs by hucksters, became common in rudimentary kits. Their labels promised miracles, but often they were doled out by the handful because there was nothing better. A typical frontier doctor saw everything from broken bones to snake bites, usually with scant training. Many of them learned on the job. In fact, by the 1860s, many frontier doctors had degrees from faraway schools, but little practical experience, while others were doctors in name only. Some had apprenticed under someone else, some had simply decided to hang out a shingle. In one frontier town, one doctor had no medical training at all. When another qualified doctor arrived, the town's only treatment for conflict was a challenge to a gun duel. The untrained man lost, and so did any false confidence about frontier medical talent. One frontier surgeon told a cynical joke: the patients of the homeopaths died of the disease, and the patients of the allopaths died of the cure. People feared doctors almost as much as disease itself. Epidemics of cholera or smallpox would sweep through a mining camp, and the only thing quainter than the primitive remedies was the weekly visit of a doctor, paid in pigs or sacks of flour because coin was scarce. We often think of the West as a place of quick gunfights, but many more frontier stories involve knives and saws. There are accounts of doctors performing gut-wrenching abdominal surgery, an ovarian tumor in a woman so large that she chose a 60-mile horseback journey in late winter to reach the nearest surgeon. She survived long enough to endure the surgery and heal, a rare success in a time without antibiotics or anesthetic. Childbirth was no safer. Frontier women facing complications often died without a skilled midwife or doctor. If a doctor did arrive, it might be as risky as combat. One Kentucky physician, traveling through the Mississippi Valley, was sought out to help a woman with a massive tumor during winter. She climbed on her horse for 60 miles over icy trails to reach him. The doctor operated on a Sunday because that's when he felt prayers were strongest. No anesthetic, only faith, fast hands, and 2 assistants holding the woman down. It took hours, and infection loomed. She did survive, but in the hospital she was understandably delirious from pain and blood loss, and even then, some townsfolk hissed it was devil's work. Surgery itself seemed against nature then. Every day, frontier doctors tackled wounds that today would be routine. A cowboy's broken arm, a miner's crushed foot, a gunshot that tore through muscle and bone. Those were common cases. Their tools were crude: bone saws on cutting blocks, knives, tweezers, scalpels often dulled from overuse. Sterilization was a new idea. Some forward-thinking doctors soaked instruments in whiskey or carbolic acid. Many others simply wiped them on a rag or a patient's dirty shirt if no. A better option was at hand. Amputations became distressingly common. If a limb was shattered by a bullet or a falling rock, the doctor often made a quick decision: cut it off or watch gangrene spread. There was no time to screw up. One surgeon prided himself on amputating a leg in less than 3 minutes. He cut so fast that he accidentally sawed through the fingers of his assistant and nicked another on the arm. None of them survived. The patient was left bleeding with only a stump and no anesthesia. The grim efficiency could save a life, but even the bravest men screamed. Infections were rampant. A small cut from a rusty nail or an axe often meant weeks of agony. Some illnesses like tuberculosis, measles, or cholera ran through camps. Doctors knew the importance of clean instruments and boiling water, but germs weren't fully understood. During an outbreak, doctors rode tirelessly from cabin to cabin, sleeping often on the saddle. One account says frontier doctors snatched sleep in the saddle, never really resting until the threat abated. They risked their own lives walking into quarantine shacks of fever patients, hoping to save someone from sickness that could not even name. Many towns relied on traveling healers or snake oil salesmen. If regular doctors were scarce, charlatans held traveling medicine shows. Crowds packed the saloons to buy patented elixirs with exotic ingredients. They did little more than vitamins and alcohol. When a frontier child came down with scarlet fever or a miner contracted typhoid, homemade whiskey or a patent tonic was sometimes all the medicine available, and money was scarce. A doctor's fee was something like 25 to 50 cents for a visit, maybe $1 overnight. There was no such thing as health insurance. If you had nothing to pay with, you fed the doctor's horse or gave him some bacon. A broken leg might cost $5 or $10 to set, and delivering a baby might be $4. Many frontier households earned only $10 a week, so a hospital bill could bankrupt a family. Some brave doctors made up for poverty by mixing herbal remedies in town. In some small towns, the doctor was also the pharmacist. He grew medicinal plants in his yard and made salves in the back room. Frontier communities were also socially split on medicine. In one boomed town, a modern doctor set up his office in a brewery. When fire destroyed it, he moved into a saloon next door. There, he set broken bones between poker games. In other towns, an untrained man calling himself a doctor might duel a real physician for the right to practice. It sounds like fiction, but locals were desperate. They flocked to any drapes or bandages they could find. Through it all, survival was uncertain. You could have the bravest doctor and still lose because your body was weak or germs were too strong. A hunter's wife might bleed to death in childbirth on the prairie if the midwife couldn't stop it. A gambler shot in a street fight might die of an infection while laughing at the doctor's crude tools. A prospector bitten by a rattlesnake might die on the trail because no antidote existed. The Wild West wasn't tamed by medical miracles. It was carved by endurance, faith, and tough luck. In reality, frontier medicine was not a showcase of heroism. It was a gamble with life and death. Long before an accurate diagnosis could be made or a bullet could be safely removed, people hoped they got lucky. In the end, the medical reality of the Wild West was defined by improvisation and fear, not the calm competence of film. The only things guaranteed were the aches of whittled-down bodies and the hope for an unexpected cure. And when dawn finally came over that frontier cabin, no one celebrated a painless miracle. They just kept living, grateful if another day had been won against the darkness.